He just goes.
Join the chat.
All right. Good evening. I think that means we're live. A minute early. We're getting everyone going.
I think so.
So
it's always the slightly awkward bit when you can't see who's joined.
Yeah, it's all right. Let's just pad for a minute, shall we?
Corpse.
If you're one of the early crew, Arena, Brainy Heart, Mariano, good to see you. Thank you for joining. This is our 25th one of these now, Creative Exchanges. We've been doing these consistently. I say consistently. We didn't do January. We tried to do these every month. We slipped in January for a few different reasons. Half the crew was driving around the north of Norway for a couple of weeks there, so we slipped. Bram, so we got some Portugal in the house. All right,
got some regular names showing up here, haven't we, already?
Yeah, got some regulars. Mariano, I know he held his own community session last night in Innsbruck at the Burton HQ. Very good to see. Pasha, we've got a fan already joining us, Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy. Hi. So excited, chat.
And we got Matthias, I assume up in Bergen or out in Bergen, the wettest city in Europe, for anyone who's questioning.
Well, wetter than Manchester, come on.
Wetter than Manchester, even. So this evening we are going to be focusing on the DB Fund. So just before Christmas, we had our holiday campaign, which you may remember. I should have this teed up. I don't have it to hand. And the title was Keep Dreaming Differently. And at the end, it was, hey, we're going to fund 2 creative projects to help bring them to life through a mixture of support in the form of a grant and in the form of mentorship, which is where these 4 fine people, along with me, jumped in. So we have Matt Barr, who many of you know from Looking Sideways.
Hello.
Matt has hosted quite a few of these, runs his own podcast, runs his own PR agency, like myself, middle-aged average surfer on a good day.
I'm proud.
If we go round, we have Chris Burkhardt calling in from Iceland. We'll go into a little bit of what everyone is working on in a bit. Pasha, you are calling in from Ecuador today?
Yes.
Very nice. And the one known as Cuban Luis Medeiros, dialing in from Montreal in, hopefully the passenger seat of a car, and I assume you're scoping rails over there.
A lot of nodding going on.
A lot of nodding. Nice. All right.
We should find out where everyone's dialing in from, John. That's a bit of a tradition.
Yeah, so if everyone in the comments can just jump in and give us your location, that always helps get this going.
Anyone from Sri Lanka? That's what I want to know. And then, John, are you going to give a bit of an overview of like what the fund is and how it's been going, or do you want me to do that? How do you want to do it? Oh, here we go.
Yes. Sorry, I just realized I was hearing myself twice. Here we go. So we've got Czech Republic, Belgium, Portugal, Austria.
In the house. There we go.
California, Austria, Stavanger, Ireland, Seattle, Harvard. Oh, here we go. Austria, Barcelona. Very nice.
Yeah, always great to see.
So, as a recap of the fund, I suppose a couple of years ago, over a conversation, Matt had always been saying, and you can probably phrase this a lot better than I can, Matt, that you've been looking for ways to help bring creative endeavors to life. We at DB enjoy all aspects of creativity. I think this is an area that we try to focus on, partnering with creatives such as the folks on the call today. And because we feel there's so many stories out in the world that can be told, and for us as a brand, it's kind of a sharp point. There's tons of brands out there who want to go and focus on people surfing the biggest waves or snowboarding down Alaska or whatever else, but we've always looked for our niche, and we feel that sort of empowering creativity is that. We did our first version of this 2 years ago, and we had 2 projects which became the sort of the winners of that project. We had one which was actually based in the UK, which was focused on issues around overcrowding around the UK, pollution, sewage issues, etc. And then we had another one which was focused on people in action sports with ADHD and other neurological challenges. I think Matt, myself, the DB team did a lot of learning in that, of what we need to do to actually help bring projects to life.
Yeah, it's a super interesting experience, that, wasn't it? I think on that one we had, I think even that year we had like about 200 entries, didn't we? Like,
yeah,
and a really broad range of. Yeah, I think what we obviously realised, and I think like a lot of people on this call will empathise with this, is just like how many ideas are out there, like what like the appetite to do creative things, and like how initially when you try to start out, like how difficult it can be to understand like how to get it off the ground, like how do you raise money, like how do you get people to take your idea seriously, how do you distribute it, like all those things that we've all on the call like learned over the years, right? So that was kind of the idea, wasn't it, John, that we would like find these initial ideas and help with that, with the mentoring, with the distribution, with the creation. And I think, we learned a lot going into this one, didn't we?
Yeah. And I think, maybe Matt, you can jump into it, everyone. But that's the point that we wanted to bring people like Chris, Pasha, Lewis together today for, is one, they're going to be mentors on the second edition of this, but also they all have brought their own projects to life, whether or not that's books, films, even just putting together trips with friends. Like, these are all things which, when you start out, it can be quite daunting to think like, how would I go and make a book? How would I organize to take people around the world? Lewis last year in Maelhofen, how would I bring together 50 different snowboarders from all around the world and get them to one place for 1 week? Like, there is no sort of playbook for any of this, but that's a little bit what we're trying to sort of unpack here. And Matt, maybe from there you can jump in and go into it with everyone.
Yeah. So we decided to do it again, basically. So we, as John said, we launched in December off the back of the campaign. We've had 230 entries, I think, maybe around that, which is amazing, all over the world. Huge variety of ideas and passions and interests. So we're at the next stage now. The entries close at the end of January. So we've pulled these guys together, Lou, Chris, and Pasha, who are going to be our judges. So we're going to work together with these guys to basically choose the winners. And what we wanted to do today was like give a bit of an insight into the judges and what they do, a bit of their backstory from a creative point of view, and then we're going to talk about what we're looking for when we're going to be judging this, and the way it's going to work. We've been pretty transparent about this, really. What we'll initially do is we'll get it down to like a long list of like 20 people whose ideas that we all like, and then we'll collectively, as a group of 5, we'll then bring them down to probably about 5. And then what we normally do, what we did last time, is we did interviews with people. Like, we spoke to people, we got on calls, we found out as much as possible about their idea, about them, like what support they needed, what they needed from us. And from there, we brought it back down to 2 winners. So that will probably take a couple of months. We'll be updating on my channels, Looking Sideways, and the DB channels, like, as all this goes on. But yeah, that's about the size of it. So I think let's start today with meeting the judges. So Pasha, can we start with you? Is that all right?
Sure, definitely.
So how do you describe what you do? Like, what when you're telling your mum?
Yes.
What do you say?
Oh, I think currently it's shifted more into, I'm a surfer, first and foremost, a surfer, and just kind of being able to link through storytelling through these kind of perspectives of surf, and how that has different effects on different communities and cultures, languages, and being led by stories of women. That's been a really big focus of mine growing up, and leaving competitive surfing to sort of pursue a kind of space that can allow me to find these stories and listen to these stories a little bit better. But currently.
And there's a bit of a, like, because you've alluded to it there, but there's like a bit of a social impact of surfing kind of in the storytelling that you sort of trade in, isn't there? You know, you're interested in like the depth behind this stuff, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I think, you know, we definitely try to find these little circles of hope to then inspire, you know, positive change in terms of legal action and a lot of, you know, climate kind of campaigns, but as well as, you know, just being able to share that inspiration and joy of a different path to these places that we, you know, I get to travel with surfing and, you know, these communities that you get to visit. There's just so many amazing links within the storytelling and the positive impact that you can make. So it made a lot of sense to me growing up to kind of follow into that sort of route. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you're working on a super interesting project with a couple of our mutual friends at the minute. So looking forward to hearing about that in a minute. But Lou, so you are in Montreal, I believe, in a car driving around with a hangover. Am I calling it right? You're on mute, that's for sure.
The classic. Come on, Lou, hit us on mute.
Yeah. I'm definitely not hungover. I'm sleep deprived for sure.
And how's Montreal? What's going on?
I'm in Montreal right now with the TDI crew. We're filming a snowboard movie this year. We're in the streets right now filming just some urban snowboarding. Yeah, the weather was super cold. Montreal got like the most snow it's ever gotten since like the 70s. So we were here kind of enjoying that storm in the city, which was super sick. There was cars buried all over the place. It was like the city had never seen snow before. So yeah, not too bad out here.
Yeah. And so you're a filmer, obviously, but also you know, you're technically doing it. TDI, as you described it, is also like, how do you describe that? Is that also like an ongoing project because you're making films, you're working with brands, you're doing community events? Like, how do you describe that?
I like how I describe TDI to like people who are in snowboarding or not in snowboarding is just, I would say it's a stepping stool for like all of my friends and, you know, me, myself as well, to do things that we want to do, and branch out and connect with those things. So I want to film, I want to storytell, I want, you know, to uplift my friends, uplift others in our snowboard community. We want to do that through, you know, community projects, community events, through films, through collaborating with brands, through, you know, bringing, you know, the snowboarders' visions to life. So it's really an over-encompassing thing that kind of allows you to do everything you want to do.
Yeah, it's like a platform by which you can all kind of raise each other up and like find the projects that you're interested in. And yeah, see, like yeah, we'll dig into a bit more about the film project in a minute. Like, because what I think I'm interested in you, like TDI is obviously, I imagine, got a lot of brands wanting to work with you right now, and I'm like really interested in like how you play that, like how you choose the projects that you work with. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Chris, you're at home. You're actually.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. It's a rarity.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Do you need me to update you on what I'm up to besides healing a broken foot right now
I didn't realize you'd broken your foot. Right? What?
You play hard. You know, you play hard. You got to pay. So that's what happens. But yeah, I'm back in Iceland, and I'm kind of in the midst of the beginning of the year for myself, which usually looks like a lot of project pitching and proposals. I really appreciated what you said earlier, both of you and John, because I do feel like there's that separation behind like the idea and then actually bringing something to life, which is like the hardest part of it. You know, we can all incept these cool concepts, but then bringing it over the finish line and bringing it to a place where it can get funded, you got to kind of almost shift from like a creative mind to a logistical mind to a producer, and that's really hard for people because you're
right. Two different skill sets.
Two different skill sets, totally unteachable. One of them is really based on experience, and I think that's one of the hardest things. But yeah, for me, I'm at the tail end of a film tour for a movie that I came out with that's now available on Apple TV. So I'm going back to the States in March. I've got like 5 speaking gigs I'm doing, and then I go to Bozeman and I show that film, and then I roll into April, which is like my first expedition of the year, which I'm in the midst of like pitching and talking and trying to plan out what I'm going to do. So this is really fitting for me because it's something that I still deal with every day. Something that is a huge part of my life is trying to dream up the project. What does it look like? What does it support? What's the initiative? Is it about a place or a person? And all this is to say that my job is still to be a storyteller, and it's what I love most, and it's the funnest thing I get to do. So most of my life is kind of built around this, and I'm excited to be a judge and support this.
And I think what's really interesting about what you just said there as well is like, because I bet the skills that you're employing now are the same that you employed when you did your very first project at the end of the day, right? Like like you say, experience is a huge part of it, but it's the same thing, isn't it? Like you say, it's like, here's the idea, to be passionate about that, and you have the idea about executing it, but really, how do I make it a reality? How do I get people to believe in the idea? How do I work out how to get it in front of people? Like those are the things that, it doesn't really matter like how experienced you are or what scale your project is, you're still dealing with those same challenges, right? Really.
Yeah. And this is why I feel like I hope that everybody who tunes in realizes that although maybe their project, that thing might not get picked or might not get selected, the value of what you walk away from in a situation like this, where you get to learn from mentors who've done this or are doing this, is so valuable. Like I would have killed to have this type of thing early in my career because I had to learn it all the hard way. I was trying to figure out how to use InDesign, on the Adobe suite, 18 years ago, because I wanted to build a deck to pitch a project, because I had heard that terminology and I wanted to know what it was. So I feel like it's super valuable. And I hope that like the creative exchange, being what it is, just the sharing of ideas and concepts is really valuable. And it is a bit of a hidden process. There's a bit of a mystery between like thinking about it and then actually getting over the line. And as you mentioned, it does take this like analytical part of the brain to operate it, and hopefully kind of dispel some of the mystery around it.
Yeah. Well, Pasha, this is a really good point to talk about your latest project. So you're doing this with Lucy Small and Maddie Meddings, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sabo, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Sabo, yep, exactly. Yeah.
You want to tell us about Sabo, like what the idea is, and we'll dig into a bit about how you've got it this far.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So pretty much a few years ago, kind of been throwing around these big ideas, these great conversations, these big brainstorms about making a film in Ecuador and showcasing Ecuadorian women and how they lead in their communities. And so Sabo comes to life, the story of 4 women, Ecuadorian women, 2 indigenous Quechua women in the Amazon and the Andes, and we have an Olympic pro surfer from the coastline of Ecuador and also a naturalist guide from the Galapagos. And so we just cross over these incredibly biodiverse environments and showcase these leaders, these unknown leaders in their communities, and be able to weave this story in with my heritage and my connection to Ecuador and through ocean and forest conservation. And so it's been an amazing project over the last couple of years, I guess. Growing up sort of in between Ecuador and Australia, it was a very interesting one to kind of put forward my personal story within such a film setup that we were going to just be visiting these women, but also to weave in like logistics of visiting old family that you don't even really have much communication with, or these interesting little I guess turns we take along the way, but yeah, it's heading out in April for a premiere tour throughout Australia, and then we're bringing it over to Europe and then the States later in the year. But yeah, it's going to be our first feature film working independently with Lucy Small and Maddie Meddings, and learned so much in that process. Before that, it was kind of a little bit more smaller projects that I kind of could showcase through with a previous sponsor, and so it felt like it was a very good kind of template to operate in, and then to go completely independent for a film that definitely a lot of firsts, but incredible. Yeah.
And like I've got a couple of questions, if that's all right, on like firstly on the collaboration process. because like I know Yamasurf, like Maddie and Lucy's last film.
Yes.
Like I've actually spoken to them for my podcast about that, and what I found really interesting there was like a lot of it was written on location. You know,
Yes.
like they kind of had the idea we're going to go to this location and we're going to discover these stories. Like, but it was quite a documentarian process in the kind of truest sense of the word, insofar as they went there and they recorded and documented what they found. Was it similar in your case with this story? Like you had the beginning of an idea as you've just described, but then once you were on location and you started to gather footage, it began to evolve. Was it like that in this case?
Yes, it ended up kind of twisting into that a little bit more. We even like set off without knowing the name of the film. We were like, yep, we'll let that come to us, you know, kind of sitting in the back of the car just throwing around words and me thinking like, oh my god, like so nervous, like we were just using the word. But it was amazing. A lot of these stories, a lot of these women, these interviews we had set up beforehand, but I think in terms of these big revelations that we would sort of get to, that definitely evolved as we went, and it was crazy. We actually, the crew arrived on location in Ecuador for a month's filming on the day that there was a gang, narcos gang takeover of a public TV station with shotguns, and so
Wow.
the whole country actually went into a national emergency, and there was curfews. We weren't supposed to be driving, and you know we were on call with Maddie and Lucy. They were in LA, and I was in Ecuador, and like you know the feeling in the street was just like gnarly. There was talks of civil war and all this crazy things.
Wow.
And you know the girls, I was like, are we still going to do this? And the guy's like, let's do it. Like, okay. So we filmed the whole month of probably the most heaviest time in terms of national security. It's been for forever, you know, and so, but now, you know, we had the best time ever and not one problem. And, you know, we shot the whole thing all together as women led. And yeah, it was a lot of excitement and kind of, are we able to do this? But, you know, the worst battle was, you know, fighting some mosquitoes and the equatorial sun and some sea lions in Galapagos. So, you know, came out unscathed, but yeah.
Well, I'll come back to the next part, because obviously where you guys are at is distribution. I imagine there was some funding to take care of later, so we'll come back to that. But Lou, like in terms of your project, you're on mute again, by the way. So you're making a snowboard film, right? So and like you with TDI. So like where did that kind of opportunity came from? Was that an idea that you pitched to partners? Like what? How did that work for you in this case? Because obviously that's like, you know, you need a budget, you got to plan it, you got to produce it. I'm guessing you're doing all that, but like talk us through the process of how you got to this point.
I would say like how we got to this point kind of started last year when we started doing some of those events I was telling you about, kind of like in Colorado and Europe and Tahoe, some of these different places. It kind of really helped us kind of figure out what we wanted to do, and also kind of build I would say a reputation and just our name up, and kind of like, you know, our access and what we're capable of.
Yeah.
So it kind of just started there, of us kind of putting in our own dollar and just putting in our own free will to, you know, be around each other and just create a community we want to be a part of, and also a community for other people to be a part of.
Yeah.
And then upon that, it kind of grew into, well, obviously snowboarders make snowboard movies and we want to make one. So that kind of was obviously a natural progression for us to, like, as a crew to do. And it was awesome because once we decided that, kind of like the people who had seen our community events or had been around us before immediately wanted to support it, which was super sick. So we kind of just naturally progressed from everyone just kind of spending their own dollar to then getting some support and kind of going around like as an effort to want to do one singular goal.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you kind of create, so by investing in yourselves, by investing in the community, by doing this work, which is another theme of creativity, isn't it? Like, I think, Chris, you did that with your first project, didn't you, with your California book? You know, you basically put yourself out there and made a thing that then gave you a platform, right? And it's quite similar to what, by the sounds of it, with you, Lou, like, you know, do events, create a community, show up yourself on your own terms, firstly, and then you can kind of have a bit more control, right? You can be like, well, yeah, if you want to work with us, like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and we'll do it our way, essentially, which is, again, like an experience thing. Would you agree, Chris, to like be able to start getting those relationships with brands and funders,
Yeah,
and like on your own terms, like having the confidence to sort of lead it that way? Do you know what I mean?
I think so. I mean, I would say, I'd venture to say that one of the biggest things is, you know, if you're planning to kind of carry a project from beginning to end yourself, you need to be able to, at least when you're reaching for money from somebody, from a brand or whatever, it's an activation or something like that, you need to be able to ensure that you can kind of carry it over the goal line. And I think that a lot of times when you're pitching yourself or you're asking for that budget, people are kind of evaluating you like, okay, is this something that this person's actually going to see through? And obviously having a tested, proven kind of you know, roll sheet of things that you've done is helpful. But also, I think that I just can't urge people enough to realize that it is that communicative people skill that really comes forward when you are pitching. Like, you're selling yourself in a way, and I don't mean to like make that feel in any way less authentic, but it's the truth. Like, if you're the figurehead of this project and you're the one that's going to be carrying it from stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and this brand or whatever it is going to be giving you, you know, something to support that, they're buying into you. They're buying into your belief. And so if you're not like, you know, filled up with this passion of what you're doing and it doesn't exude from you, it's hard to get people on board. And so I do agree that a big part of it, I think like the missing link maybe is that component of articulating what you're doing, articulating what your goal is, or defining it down to a goal. And I've been really like not preaching this lately, but like having a lot of conversations around this, that it's super helpful to like work backwards from the end goal. You know, I am hard nosed about that always. Like, how do we define success in this partnership, in this project, in this book? I mean, how do I define it for myself? And also too, like, keep in mind, not every project, you know, most projects, they're not a money-making scheme. It's never been about that. You mentioned my first book. That was something that we lost money on doing. But the point is that it came back and benefited us with dividends by allowing us to basically go out and use this as a marketing tool for other bigger projects. So again, if I was looking back at, you know, 21-year-old Chris, when I published that book, The California Surf Project, that turned out to be a huge thing for my career, I would have approached it so much differently. You know, yeah, we got a book deal from Chronicle, all that's great, but I would have looked at that and I would have said, okay, the goal with this is just to have a great portfolio I can hand to people, and that's the goal. And I only say this, and I only am expressing this monologue because I want people to really realize that if you cannot figure out a destination in mind, like what your project is going to look like or be, or what its purpose is, none of us on this call can draw you a roadmap to get there, because it doesn't exist. If it's floating in the ether, I could be like, you know, maybe it's because there's multiple ways to get to a desired outcome. If you're making a film, you're making a book. If somebody asked me, okay, I want to make a book and my goal is to make money, I'd be like, well, maybe you want to consider this option, or maybe you want to consider that option. If the goal is just to have a great calling card for your business, then maybe you might forego trying to make money from it. If the goal is to do a sick community event and you want to have a film that's going to, you know, blow the doors off and it's going to be packed, maybe the goal is to find somebody to pay you to screen it and not to sell tickets, you know, or vice versa. There's a lot of ways, you know, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, great. And just a good point as well to say, please get your questions in, use the chat. We'll start fielding some questions that you've all got for the panel. So just get them going. But John, you were nodding a lot then.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
And I suppose, Chris, a bit to your point, some of this you end up thinking about of this in retrospect, because I suppose like you, Lou, I made a snowboard film with some friends from England, snowboarders.
Hunger Pain. I remember it well.
Pain. We made a snowboard film. I'd never produced a film. We had much more talented people than me editing it. I went out and got the money for sponsors. But to your point, you get to the end of the thing and you're like, oh, I've got a physical thing. And this was obviously when we had physical DVDs. And you could be like, I can make a thing. Much like you, Chris, I lost money on that. I made a book.
The good ones you always do. You always do,
yeah.
Luce.
I made a book during the pandemic, and I think at the end of it all, it was probably a wash. I probably lost money at the end. I'm not sure. But again, you come out of it with a thing and you're like, I can start and complete a project, which whether or not you want to make 10 different books or projects, or you want to go and get a job, it just shows people that you can do stuff like that. So I think it's a super valuable point you bring up there.
Lou, when you started to organize these community events, was it because you felt there was nothing in the community existing? You needed to fill a gap almost.
Honestly, we started doing, I'm not gonna say because I do it with the crew. We started doing them because snowboarding just provides such a free space, and we really want to amplify that notion of freedom, because obviously, in a world where opinions and all these things are where you don't get that freedom, we really wanted to encapsulate a space where you can truly be yourself. And when I hang out with my friends, we like to joke around, be loud, have fun, dance, party, snowboard, and we live a sick life doing that. And we just want to be able to show people that you can be 100% authentically yourself and push the envelope on the things you want to do. So that's kind of why we started them.
Yeah, well, it's obviously, people are responding, aren't they? It's kind of taken off quickly by the looks of it.
Definitely.
It's also rad. I just want to interject. I think what's so cool about that is like looking at a space where there's a hole or there's a void, and then filling it with something that isn't serving the community. Usually, like I think about this. I try to extrapolate that from maybe like an event or an experience, even to like making a product. Like a good product should only be brought to market if it answers a question or solves a problem. And I would say that like with a book or a film, it's the same criteria. I have to filter it through something. And so if I can look at like even a film screening that I might do, it's like I want to go to a community where they aren't normally getting this kind of film, because even though I might have less people, they're going to be stoked. It's going to create brand awareness for me or my project, and they're going to remember that experience. It's more meaningful than if I was to go to like San Diego, for example, no hate on San Diego, and show a surf film if I go to like Bozeman, Montana or something like that, because these people, it's a community that I haven't served before, right? So I just look at that, and some of these things are investments, some of them aren't, but I think that there's got to be like kind of that filter that we apply to the things we invest our time into a little bit.
Yeah. Pasha, you mentioned earlier about almost like a shift in the stories that you wanted to tell. I'm wondering if, again, on this theme that we've just touched upon here, if it was a lack of storytelling that spoke to you that kind of inspired that as much as, because, it's thin, there's a lot of generic storytelling, right? Which has its place, obviously. But you're obviously trying to tell a slightly different type of story. Was that one of the creative inspirations for this project?
Yeah, definitely. I think, to sum it all up, I have been able to kind of experience a surf industry kind of on one side of a perspective, and it was an incredible learning opportunity, and got to be surrounded by so many talented people. But I just felt like the stories that I'm able to kind of witness now and be on the other side of the lens, and another side of a relationship with the ocean, I think it kind of has that depth that really interests me. And this big question on how this practice and how this love for the ocean is received in so many different ways and in so many different places, where I was very kind of surrounded by one, I guess, story, but it's been very kind of I guess growing in every sense in terms of these different relationships that you're hearing. And yeah, I guess it's that wonder of how we all perceive things so uniquely, and that magic in that.
Yeah, completely. We've got some good questions coming in, so thanks for those. Let's go with Ronald's, I think, and I'd like to continue this with you actually, Pasha, if that's all right, because just because you are at the kind of sharp end of this now, aren't you? You know, you've done the filming, you're organizing film tours, this is the point when it's like, okay, I've got to get this over the line, I've got to keep this going. Like, so yeah, the question, how do you guys keep your motivation, excitement up? Is that kind of where you're at? You're having to really keep motivated, you're having to like keep the end goal in sight. Like, how's that been in this case?
Yes, yeah, we've had, you know, just under 2 years in this project, and so definitely towards the middle of last year, you know, once we had finished filming, and you know, once we're in this little bit of a seesaw in you know, how this project would, you know, take shape, and you know, where it would live, and the pre-planning for all of this tour stuff, it was definitely tricky to kind of keep that same spark as it was when we're on the road or doing pre-production. But at the moment, we're kind of solidifying all of our tours, and we're just about on picture lock, and you know, planning out the trailer distribution. And so there's a lot of excitement coming up that it's you know, we're kind of over that little hump, like before the editing really starts, and you kind of like, oh, we were still fundraising until the last you know, few weeks. And so it was a great moment to kind of reach those little milestones, I think. Yeah, I like going, you know, looking at the big task, and kind of going backwards into these little things that you're, you know, needing to get over, and be the daily messages or link ups with interviewees, and staying connected in ways that, you know, we're still pitching stories and writing to accompany a lot of the tour and a lot of the promo. And so to find new ways to kind of reflect on that trip in terms for like print media and stuff, it was still keeping this dream of the story alive, and feeling re-energized with it as we read again and again. It was just like, no, this is so worth it. You know, you have to just love it so much. Yeah.
Lewis, how about you on this question of like keeping this motivation up?
I definitely think keeping the motivation up is kind of maybe starts from the beginning of trying to do projects or take projects or plan projects that are your passion and you really care about, because if there's something you really care about, you never really lose excitement for it. We're kind of in the last year of filming our movie, but we've been filming this movie for 4 years now. And in the beginning, when I didn't know how to talk to any of the brands or what a pitch deck was, and I was like, yo, I'm trying to do this, and they're like, cool, that's $35K. And I'm like, but I can't even buy a glass of milk. You know what I mean? There's a lot of up and downs, but if you really, really care about what you're doing, or you have some type of passion for it, I think that passion will, you know, there's always ups and downs, there's humps in the road, but after you get over those humps, you know, you get back, you know, going forward. And even if you're not going forward, it's kind of a part of the story or the process that you are going. Like right now, for TDI, a lot of our riders have done competitions this year where they're like the last person to drop in the whole competition, or they just sucked. And that's super sick, because it's kind of just a part of the process. You don't always get to win, and it always doesn't go great. But if you get to, you know, you care about what you're doing, then, you know, that motivation won't stop, because the story never really stops.
And also, as we've been saying, this is just how you get the experience, right? This is how you learn. This is how you, in the next project, all this adds to what you can offer if you treat it like you say as part of the process. Chris, we've got another one here. There's a couple of good questions here which are kind of related to the fund, actually. So we've got Francisco, what are the key elements you want to see in this application for the fund? Then we've got another one, I think it's an Anisu, which is quite similar. What's the thing you're each looking for that excites you, builds your faith in an idea? I mean, I guess it does, we can relate this to the fund. And I guess it's one of the questions I wanted to ask each of you as judges. So let's start with you, Chris. Like, what are you going to be looking for here? You know, you got let's just say we've got 230 entries, wild variety as we talked about. And
Yeah,
I'm guessing also you get pitched a lot. Like, what is it that what do you kind of look for here?
I think this is great. This is a good question. Daily, whether it's through an email or in a DM or through a friend of a friend, I'm getting probed on like this kind of question, you know, like how would I, you know, pitch something to somebody? What am I looking for? What kind of tips or trick, whatever you have. So I feel like this is something that I'm pretty well versed in. And for me personally, it usually looks like if it's an environment, you know, again, there's a criteria here, but if it's an environmental initiative that is aligned with this and somehow, I want to understand and make sure that we're not just creating a story or a project that addresses the issue and not the solutions. That's something really important for me. Like, it has to be solution minded, right? If it, you know, I don't know that the world needs more sad stories. And I think that at the end of the day, I want to be inspired. I want to be left inspired. I want to be left with action that I can do as a viewer, right? So I'm thinking about this as a viewer. I want to feel like maybe there's a simple, applicable way. And I also want to just know this person did their research. So I think as a judge, I'm thinking about myself in the viewer's seat, thinking about watching this, thinking about seeing this, what's something that I'm going to be able to take away from that. I don't know that the world needs just inspiring content without a way to kind of activate on that. And I think that's super important. So for me personally, I'm looking at that. I would say that I'm looking that the faith component I'm looking at is really in the creative person. Like, I really want to pick somebody that this is their first foray into a project. Yeah. I love that idea. I love that idea of supporting somebody who doesn't have a rap sheet of successful, you know, things behind them, because I know that this is going to be a learning process. There's going to be failures. That's okay. There's going to be curveballs. That's okay. But I do want to see somebody who has thought through, okay, here's the creative, but then also over here is like my production estimate, you know, and that maybe that doesn't apply to us. Maybe, you know, again, we're giving this grant. We don't necessarily care how they use it as long as it gets done. But I would say that to take it another step further, for somebody to put down on paper what are all the costs associated to, that just helps me to know that that person is well planned, thought through, and that they're taking initiative. And so I really look for that, because that will then apply to the follow through.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. I mean, one of the things that we noticed from the funds, you know, entries, to be honest, is a lot of them lack that, you know, if we can be frank. Like one of the easiest parts of the task to start boiling this down, I think you probably agree, John, is they're quite, you know, just the ideas that are a bit one-dimensional, that just don't have this kind of like holistic overview that you're talking about, Chris. So I think that's really great response. John, there's a question I'd like to ask you, actually, if that's all right, because I think it's something that is from Jason Sheehan, and there's a couple of questions coming in about, you know, like how you kind of pitch, and like, you know, as somebody like basically is in the chair that's getting pitched a lot of this stuff at a brand. Yeah. Like what is it that you must get hundreds of these kind of.
Yeah. It's a really good question. Thank you, Jason. I always find with this, in general, it's easier if someone's trying to pitch you on something, or just they want to talk to you. I find it's much easier if they've already got something in play. So like if someone's already got a book or a podcast or something, and they're like, hey, you know, do you want to be featured in this, or can we work together on this? There's already a project. I think the problem is if people reach out cold and they're like, I just want to make something and I haven't started, and it's easier, you know, I'm sure you'll say it, Matt, right? I mean, I don't know how many people you've interviewed for your podcast at this point, but your sort of network of connections has probably grown exponentially, because now you're able to call on Ed Templeton, you know, any name of luminaries within surf, skate, art, photo world, who 7 years ago you probably weren't able to. And I think it's a bit like Chris was saying. It sometimes you can use your project as a calling card, and I think sometimes it's quite good if people have already got a project they're working on, rather than it just being like, something cold they're trying to get you to chime in on or get you to pitch in on, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I mean, I get pitched a lot. I get, I'm sure we all do on the call. Like I get pitched a lot of cold generic emails as it's put, like there's another question here. I want to pitch an idea. I'm not in a creative role. Any tips? It's a common thing, isn't it? Like, how do you pitch basically, and like, I'm looking for like a point of view as well. I'm looking for somebody who's got like a kind of unique, not even that unique, just a confident point of view that they can express, whatever that looks like. That's quite a vague thing to say, but not just like, hey, I want to go to Japan and go snowboarding. Can you give me some money? Like they've got like a way of expressing what they're looking for that makes me think actually they've got something quite interesting going on there. It's not the normal thing. It's not the normal perspective. I kind of think you got to find that. You got to find that way of not sounding like you've banged it out on AI. So there's a really great question here from Arena K, which is about creative doubt. It's a great question, this. Pasha, I'm going to go to you with this one because I think we can all as creative people recognize that, right? Like, and we've all probably experienced this exact scenario. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Arina. Yeah, I definitely even feel like this recent project, there was a lot of I think because of the involvement in my personal story, it's like that kind of taking yourself seriously, even in that sense of pitching like your something that's so close to you into a audience that can perceive it however they want to as well. I think there's a lot of things can be daunting in before starting these big creative endeavors, but I think in terms of following that love for this project, that timing, and to like keep observing that timing. And I had just seen on the specific project, Maddie and Lucy had just finished their Yama film and were looking to start their next film, and by chance I've been dreaming up these ideas of sharing these stories of Ecuador for a while, and wasn't sure like how it was going to come to life, and then saw this moment where they were screening their film and felt like it was time to put that onto priority and to work in a collaborative way to give that creative idea that importance. But I think it's to do with how much of your authentic like interest and love is for that project, and if that timing aligns with doing the logistics for it. But I love being able to just back yourself and make those little steps that might not be big picture stuff, but they're slowly chipping it away at it to keep it that relevant kind of position in your life, and know that you're always coming back and working on it. Yeah.
Chris, do you recognize this scenario? Is this something that you've had the idea where you're like, yeah, maybe this isn't the right time, maybe this is something I'll come back to, or you've had an idea that you just didn't feel you could pursue in this way?
Absolutely. And I would say this is the hardest thing to address because it's about learning sometimes when to say no. Or it's about like, so in a real world example, I might be working on a film and I'm like, oh man, for $10,000 more, I could add 10 more minutes to this, or 5 more minutes to this film with the music or the this or the that or whatever. Or, oh man, I got this epic song, but it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. And at that point, you really start to question, but is that going to like turn the needle in terms of the quality? Is it going to get bought for more? Are people going to pay more for it? Is it even worth it? Is this just me wanting to outdo myself? You kind of go with this internal struggle. And sometimes, to be fair, like, something I've struggled with personally is you make something really big, really epic, and then everybody, the only thing they ever ask you is what's next? What's next? And I a lot of times interpret that as like, what's better? What's bigger? What's the next thing? And I'm like, dude, like, I'm like, that was what that was. Like, I don't always need to outdo myself, but I find myself competing with myself And I'm not saying that anybody's pressuring me, but it's a matter of sometimes realizing like it's okay if the next thing isn't as big as the last thing. It's okay to take a step backwards or have a different purpose or serve a different audience. And I do feel like with this right here, at least for me, I know this is kind of a not directly answering the question, but finding out if it's a legit path to pursue. I'm always needing to reevaluate how big do I need to make this thing, because I don't know that that's going to actually affect the outcome. And I think that time and awareness and experience gives way to this. And you realize that you can make really powerful things without a lot of budget in a very short period of time. And oftentimes, those are the most potent. And so I guess it's a matter of trying to understand, like, is it worth your time? It's a matter of if you feel emotionally inspired by it. That's also something to take into consideration. So again, you kind of have to filter it through a couple things and realize that, is this the ego talking, that like I need it to be bigger, better, best, or can it just be what it is? And that's okay.
And also, like, ideas I've found personally pop up again at the unlikeliest times, right? Like, you might have an idea that, and then you might be working on something different sometimes years later, and you can be like, yeah, that thing kind of fits, makes more sense now, like is suitable for this thing, so they all count in some way, don't they?
Right.
Really.
And a quick tool, a quick tool to help with this process is put it in front of somebody you trust, or pay somebody to put it in front of them. Like I've in the past been paid to consult on projects, and I've paid people to consult on my projects, people that I'm not friends with, but I respect their work. And I mean, we're buddies, but like they're not somebody that I have like a relationship with, because I everybody's my friend, of course. Come on, we're besties. But the truth is like there are people that I respect, that I want their opinion. And if they say, hey, like this doesn't hit these marks for me, that's important. So I think that that's a collaborative process. You gotta, even in my state, you have to be willing to take criticism, and you have to seek out criticism. It's even harder when you get to a certain stage in your career. And so I feel like that's crucial.
Yeah. I mean, that's great advice. I actually did that with the last project I did, like pulled together, John was one of them, pulled together a panel of people that I really trusted and basically said, I need you to critique this. I need you to help me make it better, and also choosing the people that you knew would give it you straight, right, in a constructive way as well, which is important. Super interesting. I've got one for you here, Lewis, from Chris Bailey, because it kind of relates to some of the thing we've been talking about. Chris is asking, do you have any tips for finding like-minded content creators both online and out in the wild? But it's a community question, isn't it, really? Because you talked about like how with TDI, the community is the thing, like finding these like-minded people that you can collaborate on these projects. Like, is this something you've got any thoughts on?
I think it's something that you actively have to seek out. You're not going to find your new best friend, filmer buddy next door at your friend's house. You know what I mean? So it's really something that you're actively trying to go to spaces where people who, if you want to meet this creator or filmmaker, or you want to go to spaces where, a lot of people are filming or doing something that you want to do, you have to kind of put yourself in that position. For me, in the beginning, when I started, I really wanted to film snowboarding. That was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So I kind of just threw myself in those places that I knew everyone would be, even if I kind of put myself in a financial haggle when I, running up the credit card bill. Sometimes that happens, but it kind of like, for me, it paid off, just putting myself in places, meeting people. And 4 of the filmers on my project are all my best friends, but I met them throughout these last years, just being in those places. Yo, that's sick. I like how you filmed that. Yeah, we should do something together. And that actually turns into doing those things. So it's really about kind of putting yourself in those positions, to meet new people and be in new places and find that community, because it might just come to you, which would be super sick, but usually that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, Pastor, I mean, you've done that with Maddie and Lucy, right? I mean, that's literally what you've done. You've if I'm right, you knew each other, but you never really worked together. You didn't know each other
Yeah.
well, did you? Like, is that?
Oh, it was wild. Yeah. I mean, Lucy had just gone viral for calling out contest directors of pay inequality and at a longboard competition in Australia. And then we actually linked up. There was a contest on in my local break that wasn't doing equal prize money, and so we kind of connected over that, and crowdfunded to get equal prize money. To then having all of these big chats about these stories that connected across cultures, across countries, across languages, that all had the same feeling of like, no, yeah, we're deserving this space, and we're deserving to be here, and there's women who have done this for a while, and so we just connected over these little things. But yeah, just kind of inviting for like even the surf chats have been led to some amazing projects, and some quick Instagram messages of like, hey, you're on this side of the world, let's actually do something, I'm going to be here. And yeah, I love the idea of just being able to show up in those little communities, and seeing as well that community that you want to be a part of, and finding ways to put yourself in those spaces. And even if it's learning from the side and sitting in the channel at different surf spots, it's slowly, conversation by conversation, but you're connecting over just frothing and being stoked and being a happy human. And your passion then can go across to other people's passions, and that's the best connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, I think collaborating is a really critical part of the creative process. I mean, it's been a big theme of this conversation, right? From what we've all been saying. I mean, I've personally started projects just to work with people that I wanted to work with. Like the last thing that I did, a documentary, the guy that I ended up writing the music with was just a guy that I wanted to work with, really, and we were both like, that was it. We were both like, yeah, we should do this, it'll be fun. And it was.
Matt, just because you've alluded to it, and I just want to make sure that all the crew on the stream understand what it is. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about the last project you did? Because it's a pretty full-on undertaking of what you went and did.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a 3-part podcast documentary series about Patagonia's decision to give the company away, which people might remember. It was like Yvon Chouinard's gonna, like, we're making Earth already shareholders. So I did a 3-part, 3-hour podcast documentary series, like looking into that, but also looking at what that actually means for like capitalism, philanthropy, corporate finance, the climate crisis, sustainability. And it was a mission. John is right. It took me 2 years.
But it's amazing. I think Matt alluded to it there. The great thing, I think, with this and other projects that the crew here have done is, as you say, you started off looking at one aspect of giving the company to the earth, but then pretty quickly it was talking about distrust of governments, philanthropy, like the role of individuals in the world. It was like really, really well done. So I'm sure you're doing New York Times or something similar, New York Times documentaries.
Yeah, no, thank you. But what was really interesting about that, like you say, is, and I think it is relevant. Like, obviously when I did not know that was how it was going to end up. It's a really, like, I was like, oh, that'll be interesting. Like, let's see what that actually means. And then I was as surprised as that it became what it did. But that was the kind of great thing about doing it. Like, that was why it was so enjoyable, because the more I did it, the more I got into it. And like I say, and then different elements like collaborating with a musician and a composer, and now I'm at the point where on the promo drive, like, well, how do I get it in front of people? Like, how do I tell that story? And a bit like where you're about to get to, Pastor, and it's all part of it. Yeah. Well, I think the point I was trying to make is like that collaborative aspect is, Lou's talked about it with TDI. Chris, obviously you collaborate the whole time. Like Pasha, you're talking about it with Maddie and Lucy. It is one of the most enjoyable parts of it, isn't it? It's one of the reasons to do it, really. And you don't get to do projects on your own, I don't think, do you? Like, you're always going to have to find other people to make these things a reality. It's a really important kind of question, really. Yeah. Keen to form a team to turn the podcast into a doc series, Matt. Thanks, Francisco. Maybe this is happening right here. Keep those questions coming though, because these are great. How would you time, John and Tim?
We're running right up to the hour mark here, so we can start to wrap things up here.
Well, there's one there that I'd like to ask, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to, it's from Mateus, I think, MB Vision. What success it's quite a philosophical question. Would success be the same without social media? Or is this just nice to have on word of mouth? Propaganda is still the best. I guess it's about promo, right? I guess it's about expectations of where you want your work to get to. Because the way that I would interpret this question is, you know, these are like tools that you need to get things out there, but often what you want to achieve with your distribution might not match your hopes and expectations, right? Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Chris, do you have any thoughts on this one? You're on mute.
Unmuted. Yeah, I would say, you know, would success be the same? I mean, it would look different, right? It would look super different. I mean, I think that to me, you know, social media is the megaphone in which you amplify your projects, right? I don't know that I look at social media as being the platform for the project. I think that more meaningful stuff is meant to last longer. And so, yeah, some of us have a social media channel where we can crank up the volume a little more. That's great. But it doesn't mean that it's less potent what you're saying and what you're sharing. And so I think now, yeah, each project I'm doing, whether it's a book or a film or you know, even an editorial piece for a magazine, it has to have an element of social media, which I know makes life complicated because now there's another thing to do and there's another. But what's beautiful about it, really, to be fair, is like there was a time on social media when a lot of stuff that we put out there had to be really polished, and now it seems like it doesn't, which is awesome. I mean, that should be the goal. Like, you want to share a more authentic version of your experience, and if that looks like iPhone clips and stuff like that, great. Sometimes, you know, the film or the project we're working on is polished because it's gone through rounds of color and sound design and this and that, and oftentimes those are meant to look that way. And so I think it's nice to have a give and take. And I guess I look at social media as a net positive because I've had mostly positive experiences from it. And I've met amazing people from it. Like, all the best people I've gone on expeditions with, I've met from like a direct message. The brands that I work with today, I've met, you know, via social media. I found out about them from, so I would say, yes, like there's ways to use it for your advantage. But I don't think that like necessarily success in the project is directly tied to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Pasha?
Yeah, definitely agree with that one. I definitely see like social media being a part of that toolkit. You know, it's that little element in terms of, you know, sharing this big project and being able. I love the behind the scenes kind of way that social media, especially Instagram's, turned into a little bit more of that lower quality, but kind of almost like humorous in its own way of, like, you know, the silly behind the scenes of this incredible huge productions, and that simplify it and almost make it a bit more with a bit more humility. And I definitely think that toolkit perspective and understanding it like that, I think it's hard to not put your own self-worth in whether it is successful on social media or not, because I guess it goes to those very specific, you know, number based like gratification, things like that. But I think knowing that it's a part of your project and you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, the be all or end all if it, you know, goes viral on social media or not, or how many clicks or shares it has on one platform. You know, it has a bigger life than that and exists over different spaces. And yeah, I like that now. I think even in surfing, I like this little celebration of in real life and in live kind of premieres and tours and films and more community-based events. I think that it kind of balances out that feeling of, oh, my project's just going to be judged on social media. You have, you know, in real conversations, and I think that feels so much more a bit more kind of in, you know, certainty. But yeah, I think that toolkit, being able to keep it in that spot.
Yeah. Lou, how's your relationship with this? Do you see it as a necessary evil, or is it something you embrace?
I think it's just kind of fun. I don't really care about like social that much. Like obviously it's such a good, asset in what we do. And it like that's literally how I met John from DV, honestly, from, Instagram. It's such a good asset, but if you kind of like let it take over you, it becomes like kind of a negative thing. So like in success terms, I think if my mom likes the video, I've won. So the social media that kind of takes pressure of social media off of me, so which probably makes it do a little better. I think all the videos that I worked like my butt off on, and I'm like super hype, and the sound and the color and everything's bussing, social media hates it. It really never does good, you know what I mean? So I really don't really judge success on terms of what the apps are doing. I judge success on kind of like how I feel and the people around me, and if we're all hype, then that's a W added to the W column, and let's go get another W. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
Dubs in the chat. Dubs in the chat.
Yeah, you've answered this one from Sander, haven't you, John? But no, DB Fund isn't just related to creative film. Like we're looking at all types of idea.
Yeah, and
I can just go on that one, John.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this a bit. I spent a few hours this morning going through all the applications, and we've had everything from people wanting to go on trips to Japan and document the whole thing. Someone wanted to make a TV series about like the office for the gym, which I'm very intrigued about. Someone who wanted to make a documentary series about the electronic scene in Glasgow, documentary about getting old in action sports, which I think is maybe looking at me and you, Matt. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
A bunch of people want to start brands, people who are making books, writing books, people who've already published books who just need help to get it out there, people trying to start sunscreen brands, people critiquing the marketing campaigns that we did in Holiday and wanting to remake them themselves, which I absolutely applaud. And I love that people think that way.
That's a picture of the point of view right there.
I love it. I think if people have got a point of view and they think like, hey, you maybe missed the insight on this one, you should focus on this. Like, I'm definitely going to get back to that person. So long answer to be cut short. No, we're super open for everything. If it's, I think between the crew here, we've made everything from films that live on social media to 3-hour documentary podcasts to printed books to films which live online to giving talks in front of hundreds of people. I think the good thing about creativity, there is no one sort of rule for everything. And I think that's the beautiful thing with it. So yeah, thank you all. That was super helpful. That was such a good creative exchange. I really appreciate you all making time for it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for all the great questions.
Yeah, it's super helpful. It makes these go really, really well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Obviously, these are available online for eternity now. They go into the YouTube world, which is great. As Matt alluded to earlier, we're going to go through all the 250, get to a short list, start working on this over the coming days, and we'll do a few updates in the coming couple of weeks. Want to just again thank Pasha for your time. I know you're very busy. I hope you managed to get some good swell over there. Lewis, get some sleep, please, in between everything you're doing. And Chris, heal up well. Although everyone on Instagram, your 4 million followers, they all saw the gym selfie yesterday. Don't worry, they know you're in good shape.
I'm still working.
And Matt, thank you. You're bringing out a podcast with Truls, the founder of DB, today, I believe, right?
Came out today. Yeah. Came out today.
Okay. So check it out. You can find Looking Sideways on all of the streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc. So thank you all. And we'll be back in another month. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.